Yeah, everybody, I want to welcome Ilkka to our seminar today for Beyond Zoom. In Beyond Zoom, we are investigating how adult education had been moved from offline to online during the pandemic. But even more interestingly, we are now trying to learn lessons from how they actually moved back after the pandemic. So how did facilitation went back to the hybrid or offline afterwards, and what are the lessons learned, and what kind of support can we give partners and other adult educators if they want to do the same. So the aim is now, for the beginning, in this webinars, we want to give some inspiration. And for this, I'm really happy to have Ilkka with us today, who's joining us from Turku, from the University of Turku. And he was in Berlin not a while ago in the frame of our project on digital inclusion, Dig to Ink, where he spoke about his experience as a facilitator for integration courses in Finland. Yes. And I think this is a really interesting question, since he has to deal a lot with vulnerable people, people who maybe also suffer under the digital divide because they might not participate because to different reasons. They have economic restraints, they might not have the digital skills. However, Finland tried to work with them during the pandemic online. And without a lot of further ado, I would give the floor to Ilkka, and let's listen to his findings and experiences.
Thank you, Martin, for the beautiful presentation. Presentation? Yes, you were presenting me. So thank you for that. And as mentioned, I am from University of Turku. My name is Ilkka Vuolaslempi. I work here as a training expert, and I'm working in the Dig to Ink project together with Martin and other partners throughout the Europe. Today I'm not talking about my experience in university, as Martin already mentioned, but in this private company that deals with integration courses. And I'm going to share with you the experience of going online during the pandemic. And we can have in the end a discussion about it. Also, as mentioned already, please feel free to ask questions at any point of the presentation. You can ask either through microphone or via chat. I see the chat window here, so it's all good. So without further ado, I think I can go through the outline of what I have for you today. Yes. So today at first, I think I'm going to tell a little bit about integration courses in Finland in general, and then what happens online, and then how we went online on nationwide level. So I know systems in Europe are a bit different in how we welcome immigrants and how we facilitate the integration in the wider society. So something might be familiar to you already, something might be new. And that's one interesting point of discussion also. In Finland, unemployed immigrants are offered integration courses by the local government. So when you come to Finland and if you come here to work, then it's all good. You go to work and you might get some language courses offered by your employer, or you might not. But then in case you are not employed for a variety of reasons, then you might be guided towards this integration course. Usually they last about a year. There's this divide to 3 possible different lanes, which is sort of like a slow lane, and then there's a fast lane, and in the middle there's the mid lane. And it depends on this assessment, what has done to you during your arrival. So everybody who is guided to integration courses, they will go through a small assessment where their language learning skills are assessed, and then then based on that they are assigned a course. And this is especially so in the larger cities. So, for example, I worked in Turku, which is a medium-sized city in Finland, or a large in Finnish scale. And here we had all these three types of courses, but then there might be smaller communities or towns in the countryside where there is no chance to have different levels, so everybody is in the same classroom, and then the teacher or the instructor needs to level out and give maybe different type of assignments or different type of additional support to people in the same group. The target level of the integration course is to reach B1 level of Finnish. And I think the latest statistic I had a look was so that only 2/3 of the people attending those courses reach that level. So 1/3 are below that level after a year, usually maybe A2, A2.2, but maybe close to B1, but not quite there. Also, since it's governed by the employment Ministry of Employment and employment authorities, there's this work training period in every integration course, so that people, in one hand, they get relevant experience on work of their field if possible, and they get a reference from a local company or organization, and then again they also get to practice Finnish in a natural working environment, and not a classroom with course mates and teacher. And so what happens online? I had a privilege to work both in classroom and online on this my time with that company, and we had this model of online integration courses. There's a literature about it in the end of my presentation, and I think we can also make these links public later on, so people can, if you want to have a look at there's a little bit of research conducted on that type of doing on these particular courses, so you can read about it later also. So those are mostly offered in regions where there is sparse population. Big cities might be far away, and otherwise these people might be too far away from a closest big town or city where they could attend the course, and they might go to the employment office and they might say, okay, can you travel every day 60 kilometers, 100 kilometers? And they're like, well, it's difficult, I don't have a car, there's no bus connection. So this is to alleviate that kind of situation where you might not get access to in classroom teaching. And as mentioned, in any case, typical attendees in integration courses are might be people who have come to Finland to work but have been laid off and are currently unemployed. Then there is spouses, either of Finns or permanent residents, or not necessarily permanent, but residents of Finland. So if somebody comes here to work and they bring their spouse with them, the spouse might be entitled to this course if they cannot find employment for themselves. And then we also have refugees. Finland is maybe a bit different from other countries, or some other countries in Europe, that here the biggest group of people, internationals or migrants in any case, are those who have come for employment. And I know in Southern Europe there's the ratio between, for example, refugees is higher. But then I think in Finland, up until last year, it was the biggest group were people who came for employment, then spouses, and then refugees. But situation in Ukraine has changed that a lot. So I think last year was the first year ever the refugees were the biggest group in Finland. Yeah, so it is online, which doesn't necessarily tell a lot yet. But what happens online is that there are courses. It takes place in a online classroom, so the attendees are there with their instructor or their teacher, and then they have maybe 15 to 20 course mates depending on the situation. It is a classroom, so we can do basically anything we can do in a physical classroom. We will do also online in the online classroom, and the 20-person group is absolute maximum in the sense that so that the individual student has enough time to use language and ask questions and exercises. And well, as most of us already know, we have also possibilities for breakout sessions. So you can do group exercises you would do in online classroom. You can also do in this, or in physical classroom. You can also do in online classroom. Also in Finland, we are highly digitalized. So for example, if the task of the day is to practice how to buy a train ticket, we can do it online so that we could access the page you would go to access or buy a ticket, because in many places you cannot buy it in a physical place. There is no desk anymore where you can go and ask for a ticket. And the interaction is encouraged throughout the course. Also from the very beginning, the idea of teaching Finnish, since not everybody speaks English, and also people have limited amount of Finnish input in their lives, the idea is to use Finnish as a language of instruction straight from the beginning. So from the day one, it will be Finnish taught in Finnish. A lot of also gesturing in the very first day, and some people might have a bit of trouble adjusting for it in the beginning, but usually they get a hang of it because it's such a long period of time during the day. So there's no short limit, so you get over the stress of having to listen foreign language from the beginning. Yeah, but then maybe do any of you have questions at this point before I go to what happened in the start of the pandemic, because that's the next thing I'm about to tell you.
There is a question here in Zoom. One moment. I will have to open the camera again so that you can see who has the question. One moment. It seems like somehow my phone doesn't play with me. Well, you should see now, Maxime.
Yeah, I have a question. Maybe you said it, but I didn't hear. When did you say that this online courses began? Was it during the pandemic or when?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you for asking, and I didn't mention it already, so I didn't mention it yet, but it's a good question. So these type of courses, they started in 2015. So, and there had been prior projects or tryouts even before, but there's no connection with those. But these types of courses in this particular company, they started in 2015. So, and that's a key point actually when we get to the what's happening pandemic. So we had this system in place. It was well in use. It was past its infancy, the system. So we didn't have to start from the scratch. A good question. I hope I had a good answer.
Yeah.
Thank you. So as mentioned, this online team was in place. The system was already in place, had been going for 5 years in the beginning of pandemic. And we had a team about, I would say, maybe a dozen of people. And we had this system on hand. And what we usually would do there would be a short period in the beginning, of course, where it be given computers, or well, computers mostly. And if people had poor internet connection, they might be offered internet connection also. So and people were taught the system on how to get there, and it had been made as simple as possible for the students or attendees to use the system. So minimal amount of clicking to get in the system. Yep. And then again, also a lot of people, since they live abroad, on the perspective of them, they live abroad and they might have family back home. So a lot of people were already familiar with some type of over the internet connecting with people. So people might Skype home to their parents or other loved ones or somebody, and they are familiar with talking. Most of people were somehow familiar with talking online already before the beginning of the course. Yeah, but what happened during the pandemic? So in Finland, the lockdown started in March 2020, and it was a almost complete lockdown. There was this limitation of how many people can be present at one time. I think the lowest point we had might be 10. I think it was 10 people outside, and then inside a bit different. And in the regular online courses, in the online team, we had enough devices to give to people. But then when everybody nationwide were put in online teaching, we couldn't possibly provide everybody with a computer or a laptop. But so all the attendees who had a device of their own, they could use their own device. But then if the person didn't have a device or didn't have an access to device, there could have been arrangements since the lockdown wasn't complete in the sense that you cannot go absolutely nowhere, but you could go to a room with very limited amount of people. So there might be a teacher letting you in to the computer classroom, or there could have been arrangements. So if somebody was absolutely not able to have a device or didn't know how to use it, they could go somewhere and there might be them and some other person there help them. And what actually happened during the start? So all the instructors of this company, I think we were at that point maybe a bit shy of 200, so maybe 150. I don't have the exact number, but we 100 and some teachers were employed at that time. So what happened? They were offered very quick crash course into how to teach online, and there it came to be very useful that we had already the existing system and existing know-how. So the people who didn't have experience of teaching online, they could be taught that system or the sort of like absolute minimum of that system. And they had this week of training, and then the existing team, online team, they could take care of the students. I remember I had on Monday I had 100 students online, and then again, what you can do with 100 is very different from what you can do with 10 or 15. But we still could keep the instruction or teaching or the course going. We didn't have to say, okay, no can do, we cannot offer a course for you. So when the lockdown started on weekend, and the Monday was the first day of lockdown, first course day of lockdown, we had system already in place. And then from that it decreased very rapidly. So when it was Friday of that week, I had my regular course, no other people there, and the teachers were given a chance to sort of like take back their own group already when they have the courage to do so. So if somebody was after one day, they were like, okay, I'm cool with this. I know what to do, so they could take their students back. But then if they needed more time, they could wait for a couple of days and learn a bit more, and only after that take their own people back. And I think the next week they might have been still maybe a handful of teachers who weren't confident enough to take their group back, but otherwise we managed to get everybody online very quickly. There's discussion to have about this, and because now I might have made it sound really easy breezy and perfect, but there are also downsides, or like not maybe not downsides, but like difficulties we faced. We can have a discussion about that very soon. But I think again we can discuss about that also, because I think there are a couple of reasons why this went so easy. I might want to hear if you pick those up, or if you have the idea how to make this easy, and I then can maybe tell you how we did it. And also, please, yeah.
Now, I might ask you actually now this question, because in the training courses, how you've got a crash course in how to make the courses. Did you also got just to know the technological side from this, or did you also get to know the ethical side, for example, how to handle refugees or people who might have traumatized? And as well, did you also learn how to engage with the audience, or did you just got the technical knowledge on this?
Yeah, no, that's a good thing. A good question. So what there was, because again, a very good question. So we had this established online team for 5 years when the pandemic started. So we had already the system in place. We had most of these questions already tackled. And what is also worth knowing is that the online or the integration courses in Finland, they're very modular, and it comes from the ministry, comes what needs to be taught. So this is very a lot of existing like framework where we have to work in. So that is, in this case particularly, it was very useful because we had that there already. But what mostly happened during that week was that the other teachers who weren't online teachers, they were offered the technical know-how, and then, as you mentioned, offered or like taught on how to activate people and how to make the online course interactive, because that's the interaction in online is a bit different than it is offline. And actually, there's one question, and I'm going to take it very soon. What we had done in the beginning of the course online, in the online team, we had this clear idea from the very beginning that you have to have your camera open so that you can be seen, and I think that was a good policy to start from the beginning, so people feel more engaged. And then what I personally would do if somebody was asking like, why do I have to keep my camera on? Then I say usually, well, if you come to online class and don't have your camera on, it's the same as you would be in a classroom and you would hold your head like this the whole day. So usually people would get that. But if you didn't start from the very get-go, you weren't saying, okay, we have to have your camera on, then people would might not switch their cameras on. But yeah, Massimo, please, you had a question.
Yeah. Maybe you said it before. I was distracted. I don't know. There was a lockdown. You said in March. Passing from the presence courses to the online, there was a kind of stop, or you did it right then?
Yes. So a good question. So there was no stop. For the students, there was no stop. So we had a couple of instructors from the online team who gave this week-long training for other instructors, and then during that training week, the established online team, because we had the online team, which was about 12 people, and then we had the larger nationwide classroom team. So while those classroom teachers were having their training, the established online team was giving lessons to the students who were taken online. Yeah, so we managed to do it without the gap, and I'm really proud of it. And then it was easier to do it without a gap since there was already this established online pedagogy and the system in place. And also, and I have heard experiences from primary schools and coming there, because in Finland we have this the teachers have a lot of liberty on how to do things. So we are given from above we are given lists of things we have to teach or what we have to do, but then how we do it, it's up to us. But then in this case we had the one program everybody would use. There was this one program for everybody. What I've heard from primary schools in Finland through colleagues is that the teachers might have gotten to use their preferred program. So some teachers might have Teams and other might have Zoom, and then somebody might have Skype, and so that would have been confusing for students. But in one sense, seems like a liberty for teachers might have been confusing for students. So, but here we had one system and one program for all. So I think that made the transition easier in a sense. And yeah, maybe to add a little bit on Martin's prior question. So since it's online teaching, and well, actually, I think in a regular online classroom, the courses or the yeah, no, sorry, you can maybe cut that out.
Yeah. Yes, we're going to cut that out.
No.
I mean, my question was about if you had been what was the content literally of your training? So what were the modules you had in this crash course? So I think you mentioned already the technical side. You mentioned a little bit engagement, and was there something else? So like suited to the target group, or was that in the rush not really considered?
Yeah, that's a good question. So and this was all inside of one company. So it was other companies might have done it differently, but and the modules I mentioned were like the modules of the integration course. So what happened was basically the subject matter was the same. It was just taken from the classroom and taken online. And then the teachers who had been teaching these integration courses, they have their training and their ethical training and things like that from the classroom. So what was most sort of like needed at that particular point was the technical know-how, and then the sort of like the very basics of online pedagogy, how to engage people online and how to make things work. Yeah, and then there of course is some ethical questions that are unique to online teaching, and people were also taken or had to look at them. But then again, we had thought of those questions already 5 years ago in the established online team, so there was not that much new. And then again, also the material which the existing team had, existing online material the existing online team had, was also made up public for the wider community of teachers within that company. So transition was so easy, I think, mainly because of the existing team and existing structures that were shared throughout the throughout the company. And after the first lockdown ended, there were not complete lockdowns. We had only one. We were lucky to have only one, but then there were some restrictions, and there were times when people were taken, because again the regional authority decides if we can do it online, or if we have to, or if we can do it in the classroom, or if we have to do it online. So there were periods of, okay, now you are online, okay, now you go back to classroom. So during later pandemic there was this shift of going back, and not necessarily going back and forth, because there was some predictability, but like there were multiple transitions back online and again back to classroom.
I might have as well the question, because this is maybe important for the context. So maybe we want to come back to the beginning of the presentation. But what are the consequences of not going to or not attending an integration course in Finland if you're unemployed? What are the consequences? Because until now it seems a little bit like this is all voluntary and everybody did it voluntary, but there is of course some legal consequences, right?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. Yeah, and I didn't mention it before. So as mentioned, it is the whole system is governed by the employment authorities, and people who enter a course, they get their unemployment benefit. So you have to attend the course, and if you stop attending without a valid reason, then you will lose your place in the course, and then you lose for your employment benefit for a time. And again, that's something. Well, in a classroom, you see if somebody doesn't show up, they are not there. They don't come through the door, okay, they are not attending. But then also, if people clearly were missing the online class, that same procedure could be gone through. If they were not attending, not logging in, maybe, then you would see, okay, this person is absent, and then they would have to be, or the authorities would have to be notified after a particular time of absence. But again, we had existing procedures on how to sort of like let your teacher know if you are sick, or how to contact people. Yeah, that's a good point. So no voluntary attendance, but
I mean, this is an interesting, of course, when we discuss the question of the laptops provided, because this is exactly the question. If it is not voluntary and they have to attend, but they do not have the equipment, but there is a lockdown. So that's of course a question, but I think you answered this question as well.
Yeah.
And may I ask you, what were the biggest challenges for you? Or what was the biggest challenge to teach those courses online?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, I think maybe it's a very good question. So, maybe I try with what wasn't a challenge, and maybe I will find the challenge that way.
Or let's say for the cut scene that we will do now, press through, take a minute to think about the answer, and then you can start with the answer. So we're going to cut all the rest out, okay?
Oh yeah, no worries.
So I can ask you again. So what were the challenges when you were working with those integration courses? So what were the first challenges you had to overcome?
Yeah.
And maybe also give us a perspective, how did things develop now the pandemic is over? What remains from this online period?
Yeah, a good question. So thank you. And I think challenges in general sense of online teaching is because you are physically removed of the students. So that might bring something. And what I think about, if there's something going on in the lives of the students, if there's, for example, some trouble at home, or if they have some other sort of trouble, then how to reach out to them is maybe a bit different. But then again, for example, there was this one case, somebody had to leave their home abruptly because of domestic violence. And then luckily enough, she had the courage to talk about it to her instructor. This didn't happen to me. And then since we know where they study and we have our telephone, so we can call the sort of like authorities there or the organizations there who can help this person. So but that might be something that might be differently visible. So if somebody comes to classroom and you see they are not doing well, it's different from them being online. If they are so for any reason, if they somehow feel ashamed or something and want to hide it, it might be a bit easier to hide it online. But and still you can reach out to students also online. You get to know your students when you think about you are talking to people on the other side of the camera and not the camera itself. Then you can also make the connection with the students. And then it's also, as we know, as instructors, we are instructors. We are not psychologists or any type of authorities. We are not police or any kind. So we have to sort of like know what is our role and what is the contact surface between our role and somebody else's role, and how we can sort of like guide the student if they need some other type of help we cannot provide them. Then we have to know where to guide them and how to guide them there. But yeah, and maybe challenges when I think about going online during the pandemic is if I think about that from the perspective of a classroom teacher, is that you might have gotten used to sort of like going to classroom and going to teachers' lounge and talk with your colleagues there. You might feel alone when going suddenly online. But then since we had also this established online team I worked in, we had the sort of like the means of communication amongst ourselves. We have this electronic classroom, teachers' lounge. So that was also implemented throughout the wider team. Of course, it might be a bit different, and then people still mention that they are not feeling maybe as connected with their colleagues as they might have been previously. So that is something because it takes time to get used to being in an online teacher lounge. It's different, as you know.
And let's go to the bright side. So what is the future of the integration courses? What were the lessons learned during the pandemic and implemented today? So what changed?
What changed? I think, yeah, no, that's a good question. So I think, and it's nice how you mentioned the future, because like I think, as we know, before pandemic, most of these tools we got to use during the pandemic, they were already there. Every sort of like basic software was already existing, but maybe not in that much of use before pandemic. So the future came to us. We didn't go to the future, but the future started during the pandemic. And I think people now are more at ease at using technology, even though if you had the idea of, okay, I'm a classroom teacher, I don't do online, this is not for me. But then when you had to do it, and then when you were, as in this case, where you were lucky enough to have somebody guide you and help you, so you didn't feel like deserted. You were not given like a computer and said, okay, you go do the teaching, but you got the sort of like transition online with the support of existing structures and existing pedagogy that was already in use somewhere else in the company. And I think that was maybe the most helpful. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Finland is very digitalized society. Then having the experience of working with computers as people who go after the course, as they go to work, they won't be making notes, but they will be using computers as they're in their work, and they will have to use software. So I think it makes it brought elements into the integration courses that are necessary if you think about transitioning from the course to working life, where you don't have a textbook and pen, but you have a computer and software, and you need to work with those.
Okay, before we open up maybe to the general discussion, if somebody else has a question, my last question is, what did you personally do? What is your personally best practice to engage people in an online or hybrid classroom?
Yeah. No, it's very different depending on if it's online or hybrid. And I think well, again, as we know, it takes up a lot of planning, especially if you have an hybrid lesson. Then it has extra planning there. But I would use personally, if I would have to do hybrid, I'm very sorry, I would have a something together for everybody, a section where we would work together. Sorry.
1 moment. Shall we restart?
Sure. I take a sip of water.
Drink a sip, exactly. Drink a sip, and then we can restart the question.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would you personally do if you have to teach hybrids? What would be your best practice? What would be your exercise to start a hybrid course or an online course? So what would be your engagement tool?
Yeah, a good question. So, and I think it comes all down to planning. And what I like to do, it's a bit of a sort of like, well, easy to say, but I will say it anyway. So what I think about teaching online is, the question is not what can be done online, but how can I do the thing I want to do online? I, for example, have made people from 2 different provinces play a board game, and they were throwing electronic dice, and they were doing just amazingly. So that can be done. But if I start with hybrid, I think the thing, or in any case, because like it's different to be in a classroom or different to be online, and then I think I would take use of the tool and make the most of it and make it meaningful. And for example, if I had a hybrid class where some people are online, some are offline, and if we are learning language, I would maybe have a section which is same for everybody. We have some preface or something that is for all, but then I would use the small groups in the sense that I make people in the classroom a couple of small groups, and then people online make into a small group of their own. And then if there's, for example, if there's a search exercise where you have to search for something, then it's very nice to sort of like have people online already, so they can look for information and share it differently than they would do in the classroom. But yeah, planning is the key, and I think there's multiple good tools out there. There's a lot of exercise and experience already, so go find it and think what is unique to this, what is unique for classroom, what is unique for online, and then take that point of view and try and make most of it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
I can make a comment. Just
Sure.
no questions, but just going back with the mind to the events, and the stuff, and make some kind of comparison that which was very nice. Sometimes I just think about that was good. You didn't interrupt the work, because we in Italy we had more than a month of complete everything. That's a good idea. That's good.
Massimo, I think you're breaking off.
The connection is very poor.
And thank you for
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Oh,
and we still can hear that. Very interesting. So I think he thanked you, but then he broke away and he's not even anymore online. So that's the challenges of being in a hybrid classroom, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing.
Great. So thank you, Massimo. Sadly, you break away towards the end, but well, thank you for the comments. Then I would say as well, thank you, Ilkka, for this really interesting talk. I'm really happy that we could have this perspective, and yeah,